Let me ask you something. What's the difference between this and this? Well, before you answer, let me give you a little bit of context. This is Dae-soo. He was locked away for 15 years, and now he'll do whatever it takes to get his revenge. And this one, on the other hand, is Joe Dusek.
Let me up out of here, motherfucker. Me and you, man to man. Come on, let's go.
From the American remake of Oldboy, directed by Spike Lee and released a decade after the original. He was also imprisoned, only this time for 20 years instead of 15. And, as you might imagine, he wants revenge too.
Shit, you might want to think about what you're doing here.
I've been thinking about it for the last 20 years.
And both are about to step into action scenes. And believe me, even if it's not obvious at first glance, there are some huge differences between the two scenes. Starting with small stuff like stunt mistakes where they're clearly swinging the bat at nothing, or making the protagonist look like he has super strength. And it happens more than once. But honestly, that's not the real problem. The real issue is that just like the rest of the remake, it completely loses the spirit of the original. For starters, the Korean version gives us an impossible shot, with the camera gliding where a wall should be, turning the whole thing into something almost theatrical. And the music carries this strange, lingering sense of melancholy. He's not an action hero, and because it's all captured in a single take, you feel the exhaustion and the pain, as if the fight might never end. And when it finally does, you see a man left utterly alone, leaving behind a part of his own humanity, because in his own words, he's become a monster.
난 이제 괴물이 돼버렸다.
And I think that's why the American hallway scene feels so empty by comparison. Even though it's also a long take, it doesn't seem to be aiming for anything poetic or emotionally resonant like the original. Instead, it just tries to impress you on a technical level, in a scene that feels colorless and lifeless. This time, we've got some badass music and a character who barely breaks a sweat, with moments of Luke Cage level strength. Gone is the clumsy, almost animalistic struggle of the Korean thugs. It all makes him feel less like a desperate man fighting for his life, and more like the Punisher crashing into a stylish little revenge flick that's flirting with being an exploitation movie. And honestly, kind of forgetting why the original hit so hard in the first place. Plus, what's really missing is that raw sense of struggle and suffering that made the original scene feel so powerful. I mean, the whole part where he gets brutally beaten was cut. So instead of a monster pushing past the limits of what a human body can take, you're left with a cool anti-hero who just breezes through the scene. Because what you end up seeing as the end of the fight in the final version is this. But originally, the scene they shot for the remake was actually longer than what we ended up getting, and it kept going like this. Instead of cutting, like they do in the final version, the shot continues for another minute and a half of unused footage, without ever breaking. But I guess they decided to cut it, probably because that second half just wasn't very good, and the choreography had honestly fallen apart by then. And as you can see, the original footage actually keeps going, and ends the same way. But since it was a single take, in the final version, they had to splice the ending into a random moment, which is why the cut feels so abrupt and why there are so many continuity errors. But okay, I get it. Trying to replicate one of the greatest action scenes ever is tough. But you know what's truly unforgivable? Throwing away one of the best plot twists in cinema history, with changes that not only ruin the ending, but also the meaning of the whole story. And today, I want to break down how those changes reshape Oldboy's ending. Because if there's one thing cinema does better than any other art form, it's capturing the complexity of human relationships. And in a film like Oldboy, that emotional core is everything, since it's what what makes us connect with the story. For instance, I think the film does a brilliant job of capturing what it feels like to return to life after a period of isolation. And nowadays, that hits differently than it did when the movie first came out, especially after living through a pandemic that, at least for me, made socializing feel way harder than it used to the point where, before you even realize it, you're asking yourself questions like, why is it so hard to connect with people? Or, why does it make me feel so anxious in the first place? And if any of that feels even a little familiar, then I think it's worth paying attention to. That's why I want to take a moment to thank today's paid sponsor, BetterHelp, a mental health platform that offers direct access to online therapy, and one I personally recommend if you're going through something similar to what I went through, as getting a bit of outside help really helped me break the cycle of overthinking everything, and gave me, at the very least, a place to start understanding things and working through them. With BetterHelp, you can get matched with a licensed therapist online based on your specific needs, and if it doesn't feel like the right fit, you can switch at no extra cost. So if you're tired of going in circles trying to figure things out on your own, this is a chance to finally talk it through with a professional who's actually trained to help. And it's as simple as just filling out a quick form with your preferences and setting an expected date. If this feels like something you've been needing, now's a great time to give it a try. Just click the link in the description or go to betterhelp.com/Lancelloti to get 10% off your first month of therapy. Big thanks to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. Now, back to the essay.
Why did I imprison you for 20 years?
You blame me for what happened to your family.
Elaborate.
You see, there are a few reasons why Oldboy's plot twist is one of the most iconic in cinema history. But to get straight to the point, the biggest change in the adaptation lies in how the antagonists and their backstories are portrayed. In the original, Dae-soo sees Woo Jin with his sister, but his real sin isn't what he saw. It's that he gossiped about it to the wrong person instead of keeping it to himself. And the second twist, the big one, is that Woojin orchestrates everything so Dae-soo would fall in love with Mido, who turns out to be his daughter, in a plan built to make Dae-soo feel, in the most visceral way possible, what he once felt. In the American version, that second twist is still there, but the first one is completely different, not just in the facts, but in how the past is framed. From the start, the original Dae-soo is shown with nuance. He's a regular guy. A little disrespectful, a little sleazy maybe, but not malicious.
Now hold on. Fresh women should be in their rooms. This is a very serious infraction.
Get back to me.
Meanwhile, Joe is portrayed as a full-on frat boy bully who used to actively mock Amanda, being cruel, loud, and cartoonishly mean. And the nature of the discovery changes too. In the American version, Joe simply sees a girl in the night with an older man, and instead of keeping it to himself, he spreads it around. And the twist is, that older man turns out to be her father.
I didn't know it was your father until today. The school must have found out what was going on.
Once the rumors start spreading, the father decides to end it all.
Father.
Taking Amanda's life, then his wife's, and finally attempting to take Adrian's as well. And in the same scene where Adrian nearly dies,
Father.
the film hints at something deeply wrong about his relationship with his father, with a gesture that's, let's just say, not exactly subtle. Thing is, Adrian survives, and this, of course, changes everything. For starters, it moralizes the story in a much more explicit way. We're now dealing with something universally understood as horrific, but that's exactly where the original stands apart. Because even though what the two siblings do is a taboo, there's something more ambiguous about it, both in tone and in how it's staged. Just look at Spike Lee's version. It's a nighttime encounter, lit in a way that already frames it as something dark, more carnal and more graphic. And it opens with these cartoonishly loud moans from an older man, making it feel off from the very first second. It's like the film is holding up a giant neon sign that says, "This is wrong," and everything that follows just underlines that idea. But the beauty of the Korean Oldboy is how that same moment unfolds. By the time we get there, we already know they're siblings, but nothing else. And the scene starts off playful, just a photo shoot. A moment that feels innocent, until it doesn't. Of course, if you look at it through a personal, real-world lens, there's no question, it's disturbing. But the way the camera moves almost makes you feel like you're the one spying on this moment. It trembles, like you're really witnessing something private, something you shouldn't be seeing. And then there's the acting. Understated at first, but it slowly escalates as you realize this isn't an assault or a power play, it's mutual. And that's where things get weird, because all the elements, the soft lighting, the purple hues, the music, come together to frame the moment as something almost romantic, intimate, even tender. And just when you start to feel that, it hits you. They're siblings, and suddenly you're left with this strange sense of guilt for having felt any of that tenderness. It's the complete opposite of moralizing cinema. Instead of telling you what to feel, it disorients you. It makes you question why you're feeling what you're feeling. This isn't about seeing a bully, a psychopath, or a victim. The story doesn't simplify things or slap easy labels on it.
누나하고 난 다 알면서도 사랑했어요.
That moral ambiguity is what lets you really feel the protagonist's internal conflict when he finally learns what the villain's true revenge was.
너희도 그럴 수 있을까?
It was about making Dae-soo live through the same thing he did. And that's what makes Dae-soo's final decision hit even harder. Choosing to be hypnotized so he can forget the truth. Because everything that happened before was rooted in ignorance. But choosing to stay with Mido after knowing the truth, that's a conscious act. One that, in a way, makes him equal to the villain. It's not a moral decision, it's a selfish one. A cowardly one, but also a deeply human one, which is why it's so strikingly different from Joe's ending in the American version.
Dear Marie, you will never see me again.
Once Joe discovers the truth, he chooses to walk away from his daughter forever, and exiles himself. It's, once again, the more moralizing route. Because while one character chooses to live with something that would be considered taboo in any culture, the other chooses punishment.
I have done something terrible. Something unforgivable. And for it I must be punished.
And I think that lack of depth shows up right from the very beginning of the movie. For example, just look at how the main characters are introduced.
Make this happen, all right? See you guys. See ya. All right.
Take Joe. We get a full 10 minutes of his daily routine, and in that short span, we're hit with detail after detail that makes one thing painfully clear. This guy is a walking disaster. His first move, peeing in the street. Then, he's day drinking, shows up late to work,
You're late.
forgets his daughter's birthday,
Okay, listen to me. She is 3 years old, okay? 3 years old. Okay, so you think she cares whether I'm there or not?
insults his ex-wife.
You know what? You're a bitch, Donna.
What did you say?
I said you are a fucking bitch!
And then hits on the girlfriend of the guy he's trying to close a deal with.
Dirty movies on Skinamax.
Excuse me?
What?
In a really invasive way. And she's the one who ends up saying out loud what the whole movie has been screaming at us for 10 minutes.
You're a dick.
And after getting slapped across the face,
But you disrespect the woman I love, son.
he just goes and gets drunk again. And here's where the problems start, because from a writing standpoint, it feels lazy. Everything's overly redundant and honestly, kind of cartoonish. At this point, Joe has no nuance. He's just an unlikable guy, in the most cliche way possible. All of this, which takes 6 scenes in the American version, is handled in just 1 in the Korean original. And from the start, the intentions are totally different. Instead, here we get a short prologue where the main character is introduced.
네. 이름은
And then a match cut to him right before the imprisonment, which immediately makes us curious, and ask ourselves what happened to this man and how did he change so much? Also, that one scene already gives us a ton of important information, but the key difference is, nothing feels spoon-fed. It's a 3-minute scene of pure dialogue with the guy rambling and throwing drunken tantrums, and you have no idea what matters yet, or which of those lines are actually important. You're just dropped into it.
왜 이렇게 오늘 시술이 안 되냐? 보내줘!
It's the opposite of the American version, where, for example, the moment he touches the woman's leg, the soundtrack immediately kicks in with unsettling music.
Dirty movies on Skinamax.
Excuse me?
What?
Just to make sure we get that this is bad. But here, instead, we're simply watching a pathetic man. And that's kind of the whole point of the scene. You're not really sure how to feel about him. On top of that, Park Chan-wook uses this scene as a kind of aesthetic counterpoint. It's the opposite of his usual grand, colorful, melodramatic style, with sweeping music and dramatic camera angles. Here, it's all naturalistic sound design, jump cuts within the same shot, and everything feels like it was pulled straight out of a documentary, or, I don't know, the Korean version of The Office. But it works, because it keeps you watching, and that's the real magic of Oldboy. It's hypnotic, the complete opposite of the remake's didactic, beat-by-beat structure, which is the burden the American version carries, because it leans heavily into on-the-nose storytelling.
She's been through a lot, and if there's one thing that she doesn't need any more of, from anyone, it's pain.
Where all the important information is underlined for you, and where everything's framed in black and white terms, with no room for any shades of gray. If he was a bully before, he walks out of captivity purified. He quits drinking and becomes a new man, but not in the way Dae-soo becomes a beast.
15년 동안의 상상 훈련.
I believe you want to be a father to your daughter.
Don't touch me.
It feels more like the origin story of an anti-hero. And I think that's the real problem with this adaptation. Because even though Spike Lee is a filmmaker who's made some genuinely interesting movies in his career, this is a clear example of how you can take a foreign masterpiece, one full of eccentricities both in form and content, and just force it into the most conventional mold possible, stripping away anything that could have challenged the audience.